The next question I wanted to ask was, the refugee employment rate today, well, not today, pre-COVID, was actually 4 times higher than the UK average. This disparity is only growing. Why is this the case?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. I would say that one of them is that historically, those who there's issues around exclusion. So if you don't have refugee status, then the process before getting status and then being allowed to work means that a lot of people are excluded from the labour market, even the informal labour market, of getting skills and opportunities and training. There are lots of legal barriers, and certainly there have been periods. There was a time when while you were seeking asylum, you could work part-time or full-time, and those rights were removed. There has been a gradual set of changes around some of that, but it's still not good enough. So it means that the kind of, while people are working out their legal status and going through the immigration system, they're excluded. Employers, I think, are often reticent because they don't want to fall foul of the law, or they worry about falling foul of the law. So the more that government can do to clarify to employers and give guidance to employers so that they know where they stand, the better. The other thing is around qualifications and language. So one factor is around language barriers, not having enough language courses and language provision. I campaigned, ever since I went into politics, to get more English language provision that is free at the point of delivery for people, so that they can make that transition into work. Because successive governments have tended to, the last Labour government put in quite a lot of resource, but then during the financial crisis, they focused more on a sort of higher level language skills. But what you need for those who have very little English is language provision at every level, level 2, 3 and up. And then so the language provision is important. But for those who already have language and also qualifications, there has historically been a problem with recognition of qualifications. And you've got all these people who, who are teachers in the countries they've come from, doctors, also engineers, and all sorts of qualifications. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience, but whenever I get into a taxi, I ask questions, we chat. And often when I'm speaking to someone who's arrived and is waiting for their refugee status or has got refugee status, you discover that they have these professional jobs, but they couldn't make the transition through qualifications. So that could be improved. The final thing I'd say is, of course, like with people of other minority communities, there is labour market discrimination. And with refugees, there's probably almost certainly an additional barrier, which is around, let's say, the legal dimension and what is understood to be possible or not, and getting the right paperwork. People are often held back. I mean, I deal with a lot of cases where the Home Office is taking too long to make decisions, even when there's a clear case for somebody getting refugee status. So I spend a lot of my time chasing the Home Office to make decisions, so that people are not spending money paying legal bills while they're in limbo, trying to make ends meet and find ways of working in terms of whatever their conditions are, that they're allowed to, where they are allowed to do some work. So those sorts of barriers could make a big difference. The final thing is, and also access to training, grants, opportunities to be able to make that transition into the world of work. All of those things add up to a pattern that then leads to systemic barriers against those who are from within the refugee communities. The final thing I'd add is also about the need for other kinds of support, so psychological support for those who've come from countries where they've been in conflict. I work with a lot of different NGOs, international NGOs, and also those who are in refugee camps. And I know, for instance, the campaigns that I've done in terms of the Rohingya population in Rakhine State in Myanmar, for those who have managed to get to this country, the trauma of seeing your family members being killed, or where in conflicts like in Syria and other conflicts where rape has been used as a weapon of war, which is a common experience in many conflict zones, people who make it to our country need the psychological support to cope with what's happened to them. so that they can successfully integrate into society, access the support they need in order to be able to then have the confidence to make their way into the labour market. The final thing I'd say is that it's really important that we give people confidence, we give them the training, we give them the skills, we also give them the network, access to the networks of people who are in the world of work. So one of the things I've done is I set up a charity over a decade ago, and then set up another one called Uprising, and it's around developing leadership and employability skills. And another part of that project charity is to provide mentoring through an initiative called the 1 Million Mentors Initiative. And what we do is we support young adults who are transitioning out of education into work or who are unemployed. We give them training, we give them mentors, we also give them networks into the world of work, we give them employability support, and help them meet the right people to get into the sector they're interested in. So if you're interested in the medical profession, getting doctors to mentor you, if you're interested in business and so on. Those things make a difference. We run a couple of programs, one with Comic Relief for refugee young people, not alone, but working with other young people who are not refugees, and where they support each other when they're doing the training courses, so that by the time they finish the program, then they've got a community of people, usually about 100 others, that become part of their network. So as well as having the mentors who support them. And what it then means that you've got 100 people who are the class of that year, who can then help each other and tell each other where the opportunities are. And when an interview comes along, you don't feel that you're alone. So that sense of you're not going to walk alone, you're not going to have to travel through the world of work alone, is really key. And those are the ways in which I've tried to practically support young adults as well as young people from refugee communities to get into the labour market. The final thing I'd say is that charitable foundations can make a big difference, because they have much more flexible funding, so they can support charities. I think Sona is also a charity, if I'm correct, but there are a number of other charities that work with refugee young people and refugee older people as well. If they fund those charities, that will make a difference, especially at the moment when many organisations are struggling. And I used to be on the board of Paul Hamlin Foundation, and we set up a multi-million-pound fund, this was some time ago, which was a combination of research and practical support. Research to identify where the need is so we can influence government, but also practical support to refugee community organisations, both in terms of giving them grants, but also helping them to access other grants so that they have the capacity to reach bigger amounts of funding to help larger numbers of people.